Hello, how's everyone doing today? I decided to drop a video because the other evening when I was here at the house and the boys had driven to town, they called me up and said, "Hey, have you looked at the sky? You seen that thing flying around?" And I hadn't even been out there really too much, and I went out and took a look, and they said that there was a large drone flying back and forth over town. And when I mean a town, we live in a little tiny dot of light in the middle of a huge amount of blackness that they call a little town. We got 4,500 people here, and and I mean we're literally in the middle of nowhere. The closest town with really any lights is about 60 miles away. And Anyway, so they'd called me and said this large drone was cruising around, whatever. I went out, and by the time I looked, I couldn't find it. And I checked a couple more times, and I was able to spot the drone, but it was like over a mile and a half away from me. If it had been any closer, I would have just flown over there with my drone and checked it out. But I can go ahead and I was going to go ahead and bring this up and show you guys uh, what I was talking about. And so I can bring up Google Earth here for you. And this is the little town I live in. And at one side is where my location was over here. And on the other side is on the right of the yellow line is about the location I believe it was flying in when I was looking at it, about a mile, mile and a half. And you can see our little town is literally just about in the middle of nowhere. And it's not like the roads don't show, there just really isn't any roads. You can kind of see how far that goes. So a large circle around our whole area really has almost nothing and no one. Uh, so why one of those drones would have been out here flying around, I have no clue. But it was obviously one of those. It was probably 8 to 10 feet across. Had a couple of lights on board. Didn't have FAA lights, but it did have a large white flashing beacon. It was more like a white light than just that standard little blip of a beacon. They've got a lot bigger, brighter light. And at one point, it looked like it was shining a light down and a few other things. But I was able to get it on video, and you can see. I'll bring it up here in just a second, but you can see it's a ways off, but it's there and it's doing whatever the hell they do. And I don't. To me, I don't really know what all was going on or why those guys would be flying. I know what the official stories are, but at the same time, what are we seeing? We're seeing orbs and all kinds of other craft and everything else. Some of them in association with them, some of them not. But it just seems like really they're out there. Something is, and whether it's being controlled by us or them, we need to definitely take a closer view and see what we're checking out, because I guarantee you none of the stories we hear are going to be the actual story. They're not going to play that game with us. They're not going to just say, "Oh yeah, this is what's going on." A lot of guys have said, "Well, it's a psyops and everything else," and that's possible, since the webbot uh, did forecast or predict that this event would take place, because now we're seeing battling going on and everything else. And it said that there'd be a battle between extraterrestrials or ETs and us and our vehicles and whatnot. And that could be our drones versus their drones meaning the orbs and ours meaning the conventional, what look like drone aircraft. Um, but either way, they could have just picked that day to pull a psyops and do this on purpose because the web bot had said this is when it's going to occur. You just don't know. There's no way to really tell, and to feed into any real aspect of it without just sitting back and watching for a second probably isn't very wise. But I'll go ahead and I'll pull up and show you guys what I got to check out. So the first video here, I had just gone out and it took a little while to spot the thing, and then I went ahead and started this record. But it's not the greatest recordings in the world. But they are, like I said, an anomalous giant drone in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. So I'll just let this roll. You should have audio on it. Let me see. So the kids called me out here on the phone. Said one of those weird ass drones was flying over town. Doesn't have FAA marker lights on it, but it does have lights. Said it was shining a spotlight for a minute. There's no noise at all. Now, we don't live. Now you can see during that here. So it's represented by just a small white light. And let me see if I can bring up our circle here. Oh, that's not going to work. It's a little large, isn't it? All right, so right here in the frame, you can see there's a small white light there. And so it had a consistent white glow or white light on it. You can't see any signature from red or greens. And then it was flashing a brilliant white light, as you can see. Now, we don't live around a populated centers of area. Around our little town, you got 100 miles of darkness in any direction. Well, actually about 70. One way anyway, and then the rest is way the hell out. So there's no, this little town out here, we're just a little spotlight in the dark. So can't imagine why anything would be flying here. We do get a ton of UFO sightings out here though. Or we used to. Okay, so that's really the first clip. As you can see, it's not the greatest video, but obviously it's, what appears to be an aircraft. Later on, I had gone out probably 30 minutes later just to see if I could still see where it was. And again, noticed again a little farther away and watched it performing a grid operation where it's going to run one line out and then turn around, run another line back, and then another line out. And it was probably still a mile and a half, something like that out. But I went ahead and shot that too, and here's that clip. So it's coming back, so if it gets close enough, I'll go get my drone. Now it's still a long ways away. I can hear the freeway a mile away, but I can't hear that thing flying. So it's been, I guess, making circles. I don't know if you heard me, but I could hear the freeway a mile away, but I can't hear that deal flashing out there. So it's been going back and forth over town. Now it's moved to the east of town, and it's going back and forth again. And the voice said it's faster than shit, like fast. It's definitely not I don't think it's a flying saucer. It's a drone, and it's running a grid pattern. It's scanning for something. The grid pattern it's running is probably, at that distance, close to a mile across. So when it turns around, I can see it's got 2 headlights on it. It's definitely not got any green, just red. What
is that? There's that thing, and then above it, is that something flying as well?
I think that's a plane up there, or a star. Oh. But that over there is definitely that drone. So that's a lot bigger drone than mine. Mine, you'd never see my drone from here. With its lights, you'd never see it from here. That's a couple miles over there. If it's closer, I'd put my drone up and go take a look at it. I don't care. Wow. I think the reason I find these clips so anomalous is where we are in particular, because we seem to be in an insignificant little dot in the middle of nowhere. And yet here they are with one of these New Jersey giant drones flying it back and forth in a suspicious grid pattern. Doesn't match the FAA marking lights and the rest of it, just like everybody else. And it seems like I haven't really heard anything making the news, from this. And as well, there's other things that I've caught that I don't see making the news. Meanwhile, little blips of fuzzy this and fuzzy that are everywhere, and everyone's screaming about them. And one of the things that I want to, mention here is a capture that I basically took the photos off my television set during a live broadcast of a SpaceX launch of their Starship. And this in particular was the heavy booster on its way back in from the launch after it's separated from Starship. It's already flipped around. It's on its controlled descent. And during that descent, it passes an object. And I want to say vehicle, actually, more so than that, because it's obviously under controlled flight, or it's stable. It's not moving whatsoever. It's completely uniform. It's a ways off from the camera. It's large, appears to be metallic, very symmetrical. And of course, it's also fits in with what we would call the disc shape, or the disc shaped UFO. But no one seems to have noticed this thing. And I'll show you what I mean here. This is what I've been talking about. So this is that craft, and what we see really is amazing in its sense, because it's not part of the spaceship. And anything they ever see, they mention, and everything else. And it isn't the ring that happens, the separation, the ring that happens when they separate the two craft. They eject this ring in between the two, which discolors, deforms, and everything else because of the conditions. As well, it's just a thin, louvered kind of a ring that goes around. It's very hollow, light goes through it and everything else. And it would be flopping at 2 or 3 times the speed of sound. Yet what we see here went by completely stable and uniform. And I couldn't believe it, because when I caught the photo, I thought, man, everybody just saw this thing go by. Holy crap, And I paused it and I just rewound the live feed, took a photograph of what I saw go by in the camera, and these images here. And then, of course, this one I cropped a little bit. And by itself, it could be anything. It's not that spectacular. And it's funny, because I posted pictures on social media and my comments were, oh, that's not what it is. It's the hot staging ring, as I mentioned before. And of course, it's definitely, regardless of what this is, it isn't the hot staging ring. And it's also a lot farther from the camera than this booster. It's not a part off the booster. And if you watch it in the video, it actually goes by kind of slow, because it's at a great distance from the camera here. And like I said, by itself, it's one thing. And it's funny how people say that's not a UFO, whatever, and nobody grabs hold of it. Yet, when we see basically the identical same one from an airport in New York, it's funny, because everyone's, the headlines are, caught on camera over NYC airport, right? Yet, how come this is a UFO and this isn't? I mean, take a really close look here. Take a good look at what we're looking at here, and tell me this isn't the same craft. I mean, it's identical. All the form, I didn't do it, but you could take it out and overlay one against the other without a problem, and it's gonna be a match. I mean, it's identical. And for some reason, this in the SpaceX shot isn't UFO, but yet the one over the NYC airport is a UFO and being recognized on News Nation. So go figure. Anyway, I just thought you guys would like to see this stuff with all the drone activity going on all over the place. And since we did our own capture, I thought we'd do our own part, bring a little more understanding up, and also demonstrate how there's a lot going on out there that they're not mentioning that's probably better than what they are mentioning. With that, I'm out of here. You guys have a good day.